would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Monday edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please don't hold that against me. As always, the very best way to reach out is going to be at the website at therebelbroker.com. From there, you can send me messages, or you can click the big red button at the top of the page titled Take the Survey to Support the Show. Use the same email address both times you're asked, answer a handful of questions, and you will be entered to win a $50 Amazon gift card. We've already given out $200 to 4 lucky winners, and we'll be doing it again in February, which is just a few days off. So jump in. You're helping support the show, and you're getting yourself a chance to win $50 on Amazon. I'm happy to say that the very first instructional, video is complete. I'm going to be uploading that bad boy today. It does exactly what I have been telling everyone it's going to do. It basically just runs through that. You've gone through the process of figuring out an area that you're interested in looking in, a metro area, and then sort of taking a broader view of the neighborhoods and get an idea of where you want to invest so that you can focus a little bit more on different sub areas within a much larger market. And it doesn't cover, I'm going to have to figure out a way to dice these things up into more bite-sized pieces. This particular video is about 30 minutes long, which is, from what I understand from what folks want to watch, is about 15 minutes longer than it should be. So we'll go ahead and take a stab at this first, and I'll try to figure out ways down the road in the future to chop these up into smaller chunks so they're easier to consume, so you don't have to dedicate a lot of time at each go to each one of these videos. Now, as I mentioned, it'll be exclusively available to members of the Rebel Underground, so it's not going to be popping up on the YouTube page. It's just going to be available to folks who get it directly sent to them via the Rebel Underground. Now, if you'd like to join the Rebel Underground, you can just text the word Rebel Broker, the number 44222. That's text the word Rebel Broker, all one word, to the number 44222. You can also go to the webpage, and after you've been there for a few seconds, a dialogue will pop up, ask you to register, and that is the other way to do it. So feel free to use either one of those messages to join in. And I'll also, moving forward, for folks who join after the email goes out, either today or tomorrow, I'll make the welcome message a link to the stuff that's already been released. So if you're listening to this and it's not Monday and it's not Tuesday, the odds are the email already went out to the Rebel Underground. So your welcome message will include a link to whatever videos have been released. So this one and then all future ones, I'll just keep adding those links to the welcome message for folks who've registered for the Rebel Underground. I apologize if my voice sounds a little ragged today. I'm still recovering from this long-term disease that, of course, my children have given to me once again. So just bear with me if I have to struggle through some things here to get my throat clear. One article came across my desk over the last couple of days that was interesting. The title is Trump Administration Moves to Reduce Chances for Real Estate Meltdown. I don't want to get too much into this. We already talked about this. This relates to the FHA mortgage insurance issue that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, right after President Trump did a presidential order to stop the reduction in those premiums. And it's an interesting read, and it lays it out pretty well. And there was one part here that jumped out at me. Now, of course, the National Association of Realtors is upset about this, the California and national associations. And what's interesting is President Jeff McIntosh, who is the president of the California Association of Realtors, was quoting as saying the new administration's move will, quote, negatively impact home buyers in California more than any other state. And of course, I found that to be interesting because California is where we have a ridiculous inventory problem in terms of not enough inventory. And it's also amazingly interesting to me because the individual saying this is someone in real estate who should understand the importance of supply and demand and what happens when you increase the demand without increasing the supply. You're not helping the folks who are borrowing. You may be making it easier for them to make a purchase, but you are encumbering them with far more debt in doing so. And this idea that we can't have another downturn, how it got back into people's brains so quick after having a downturn, a year before the last downturn, hell, a week before the last downturn, these are the same experts that were saying, real estate's just going to go up. Nothing goes up forever. And this idea that we shouldn't prepare for another downturn in terms of requiring that these premiums continue to be at a level that will create a fund that can bail out all the folks who are harmed by defaults in loans, but that it somehow is helping buyers to do this. Remember, we're potentially putting buyers into this position when we facilitate these loans, and we're doing it to the folks who are most at risk of ending up going into foreclosure or having financial difficulty. And frankly, I don't get it. I don't get the mindset. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to cover this whole article. I think it's kind of interesting. There's some interesting data in it, but I'll include it in the show notes for today's show so you can read it. But I just wanted to bring that up because it amazes me how, every once in a while you can explain it away. When someone in the Senate, like Chuck Schumer of New York, comes out and has terrible things to say about this being a terrible increase to costs for homeowners. You get that. You get the political reasons why folks say that stuff. And even just as an individual, unless Chuck Schumer is involved in real estate, I'm not going to assume that he knows anything about the fundamentals of supply and demand. Now, he should, as a senator, I would certainly hope so. But maybe he hasn't thought it deep enough to realize that after what we've just gone through, you hurt a heck of a lot of people with these policies more than you help them. It may make you feel good. You may feel good that you've put them into a home. But if you think of that home as a weight on their shoulders of debt, maybe your attitude would be a little bit different. So I can cut a guy like that some slack. But somebody who is in the real estate world, who sees data all the time and can see that link between who gets hurt and who doesn't get hurt when things don't go great in the real estate world, I find that annoying. And the fact that that's coming from an organization that represents all realtors in California, it stings a little. Now, that kind of links into the other little story that came across my desk over the weekend that I thought was interesting that relates to debt, right? We've talked about how a home is debt. It has an element of it that you can clearly make an argument is an asset, but it's a debt. It costs you money. Even if you've paid it off, roofs, electrical repairs, getting the lawn taken care of, keeping the house painted, keeping it up to date, doing whatever you have to do to maintain the home. It all costs things. It doesn't become an asset until it's generating money for you. Of course, if the market's increasing, then you're getting equity that's increasing in that, and that's all fantastic. But I think it's smarter for folks to treat their home not as an asset, but as something that costs them money. I get that's not the line of thought that real estate agents are supposed to push, but I think it's a smarter way to go in terms of thinking about your financial stability over the long term, because I know with my property, I spend a lot of money keeping this place going, whether it's addressing the mortgage or dealing with all kinds of issues that come up, ranging from plumbing and electrical and things that just stop working correctly. These are all things you have to pay for as a homeowner. So that's important, I think, to think of things that way. Another little piece of data, personal income increased 0.3% in December. Good news, right? Yeah, unfortunately, spending increased 0.5% in the same month. So we saw folks spending 0.2% more than they were taking in. Or at least, yeah. And the thing that's creepy is, according to this particular article, that change is linked to a substantial amount of stuff everyone needs. The personal consumption expenditures increased 0.5%. Real personal consumption expenditures increased 0.3%. The PCE price index increased 0.2%, excluding food and energy. The PCE price index increased 0.1%. So half of that price index was food and energy, things you can't really step away from and deny yourself. So it's interesting to sort of lay out where these price increases have affected folks' ability to spend or control their budgets, I guess is a better way to approach it. But we're in a place where debt is becoming more of a worry. And the reason why I bring this up, this is a relatively small news item. So why do I mention it? It's starting to, and I've mentioned this with other elements over the past year or so, this feels a whole lot like what we were seeing before the last downturn. Now, does that mean I'm saying that the next downturn is right around the corner, if it's coming at all? No. But the stage is definitely being set for circumstances to feed into a reasonable theory that we could see another very big downturn in real estate. We've talked about we just talked about the stuff folks want to do in terms of the mortgage insurance, in terms of making it less expensive and creating more buyers artificially by doing so. We've already talked about how we have fooled with the credit rating system so that we are now artificially increasing the credit ratings of folks so that they can now qualify. So what we did last time was we didn't change how your credit rating is calculated. We simply said, we'll take a lower number. We'll just ignore that number and we'll still fund you. All sorts of things we've talked about over the last year set a scary stage. And when you start to see circumstances where we see debt increasing, we've seen increased debt when it comes to automobile loans, crazy increased debt when it comes to college education. When we don't label these things and just call it the burden, the overall burden of indebtedness, we're right up there with where we were before for an awful lot of folks, particularly the folks who've gone through college and are supporting this debt. But we're also seeing greater defaults in car loans and those types of things. So the credit scenario that we have going on now in the United States in general, in average terms, is very concerning. Because what's going to happen if there is a downturn, or if not even a giant downturn? Let's say prices stay flat for a little while, and then they go down 5% in a lot of areas. Well, as I mentioned before, when you buy a home at 3.5% down, you're already underwater the second you've purchased it. You're not 3.5% in equity on the home because you're not taking into account the cost that you'd have to pay as a seller to sell your home. Because there are costs. Closing costs, costs of a real estate person. Even if you don't use a real estate person, the closing costs alone would erase most of that 3.5%. In a lot of areas, it would erase all of it. In some areas, it would erase at least a third of it. So you need to keep all of that in mind. A 5% drop in the marketplace would mean that if someone actually sat down and did the math, there's a very good expectation that they would be on the fence about deciding whether or not to abandon that loan. If times get tough, if money gets tighter, if these different costs continue to go up, what choices are folks going to make in terms of what they have to trim back on? And many times the question becomes less about what's most important and more about what are the repercussions of doing a thing, right? If I stop making payments on my electric bill, they'll turn off my electricity. If I stop making payments on my water bill, they'll turn off my water. I understand there's some limitations on that in terms of humanitarian type things where they won't turn off your water. But these are things that'll get turned off within just a couple of months of you doing that. A house is a completely different thing. The common headlines that we read for years were folks who stayed in their home for years after not making their payments. So I think that in general, if folks are out there considering their options in terms of where to save money, I honestly think mortgages are higher on that list than they should be, simply because history has taught them that they can get away without making those payments without suffering the repercussions. They're not going to get kicked out. And I think that's a scary thing, because if not paying your mortgage ends up being the go-to solution for an awful lot of folks, if we see a bit of a downturn, then we just see a replay of what we saw last time. And on that happy note, let's take a quick break here for a second. But when we come back, we're going to talk about another Texas city that set records in 2016 and decide whether or not there's still room for new investors to come in and take advantage of that market. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner-broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Welcome back, everyone. As promised, we're going to take a little bit of time to talk about another Texas city that has set records in 2016. This time around, it is San Antonio, where home prices have risen above the 200,000 mark for the first time. The city saw nearly 30,000 home sales in 2016, an increase of 8.2% from 2015, according to an article that was posted by Richard Webner for MySA. Home sales weren't the only increase in San Antonio, according to this article. The median home price increased to $204,300. That was up 6% from $192,800 in 2015. This marks the first time it hit above $200,000 for the year as a whole, according to the article. Let's see. The local area's inventory of available homes, and I'm quoting the article now, measured by the average time it takes for a home to be sold if no new homes are listed, dropped again in December to a record low of 3.1 months. An inventory of 6 months indicates a balance between buyers and sellers. The last time the local market was balanced was in November of 2012. According to this, there's also some other speculation in terms of Dallas. We've talked about Dallas. Remember, Dallas has some huge pension problems. So while the city itself financially has problems, it still continues to be a booming real estate economy. They saw strong increases and even made several top 10 lists, which we talked about here on this show as one of the most booming markets. Increases are so high that some have even begun to speculate that if Dallas continues on the road it's on now, it could be the next San Francisco. Now, I'm not 100% sure that makes sense. We can talk about different elements of the marketplaces in those two areas that kind of foster success. And then another city, obviously, that has shown up a ton for us on any Texas review has been Austin. They had a booming market in 2016. At the beginning of the year, was home to the hottest luxury housing markets. And they're talking now about how, since things are flattening a bit in California, could Texas be the next state where we see things booming? I'm not sure that we can assume that if one state stops booming, another one does. It's not like that. It's not like a pass the hat deal or pass the trophy. Whoever has the trophy gets the booming market. It could be just as likely that nobody booms. We could all see flat markets. But let's focus on San Antonio. They've seen some pretty interesting growth. And of course, whenever I want to analyze a different marketplace, I like to start with Trulia, and I usually like to start with the big map. There's a variety of ways to do this, but if you head on over to Trulia.com, and I then look at the local scoop. Now, according to them, and they're measuring probably a larger area or a slightly different area than just what's spelled out by the folks from San Antonio, the average list price there is $276,749 with a median rent of $1,350. And if you do go to this map, one thing that's interesting to note is you can actually drag your mouse over the various zip codes, and in each zip code, it will tell you what the median listing price is. Now, remember, we can't tell you sales prices in San Antonio. Texas is one of those states that keeps that information private. So all we can share with you is the list price. And I don't know what the market is like there. I don't know if homes are tending to end up selling way over asking price or way under asking price. So there's no way for us to really guesstimate that unless we talk to agents in the area who are doing business and know, we're tending to get more, we're tending to get the same, we're tending to get less. You'd need to know. And this would be a micro market thing. This would be something where one agent isn't going to know the truth of that across all of San Antonio. San Antonio is a gigantic city. So you need to have a little bit more focus, I think, in a city where you don't get sold data. The only other way, and this is one of those few times when I think being in a larger office might just matter, I would guess that large offices with a lot of different locations all across the city that have lots of agents working for them would keep track of all of the various transactions they do across the city. So those folks, and I don't know if there's a Texas law that prevents this, but I know that if I was a real estate broker in an office or with a company that has lots of offices in San Antonio, I would want to compile this data so that I could better serve my clients in terms of understanding how much a home sells for versus what it lists for. So those kinds of offices or an agent who works for one of those large offices may actually have access to this. Now, I've put out feelers to folks a few times to find out if this is the case. If someone listening now is a real estate agent in Texas and knows one way or another how this works, I'd love to hear more. I think Texas is a very attractive marketplace, and now we've got several areas in Texas that look like hot investment areas. And I know that working with investors, they're going to want to get as much data as they can, including what we're seeing in terms of homes tending to sell for over or under asking price. Now, if we look at the trends, it clearly makes it tough to come to any conclusions based on sales prices because, again, those aren't shared. But we have seen that list prices have gone up a couple of percentage points just as over a few recent weeks. That's going to be expected as we head into summer. But also, there's been a 0% rise in the median rent per month. So rents apparently have been staying relatively stable. And I think that's interesting to note. And when you're in a marketplace where rents are tending to stay the same, but prices are tending to go up, that can often be a challenge for an investor if you're looking to become someone who's going to be a landlord and rent that property out. So a better strategy here may be the flip strategy. Why? Because you're also going to get the benefit of potential momentum. If we believe that these increases in prices are going to continue, then as you're working on the property, when you purchase it, then you close escrow, then you get things accomplished, you start doing some work on the property. While you're holding it, the market is increasing the value of the home just by momentum. So that way you're sort of experiencing a multiplier of the potential value you're going to get out of the home. Now, one thing to make sure of is to do your homework on the data. Whenever you're going to purchase a home like that with the plan of doing a rehab and then flipping it, excuse me, you're going to want to find out what the trend has been in that community. Because remember, while we're talking about how we've seen average prices increase in San Antonio, micro markets matter. So if in your local little area of San Antonio, the opposite is occurring, you probably don't want that to be where you are, right? So just make sure you're doing your homework, looking at all the nooks and crannies of the data that is available, and make sure that you're jumping on board at a time when things are going up, not in a community where things are going down. That's not going to work for you if you're trying to get any kind of benefit from how the market's going to affect the price of your property. Now, you may still find great opportunities in those types of neighborhoods. It's going to depend on your experience as a flipper. If you go in there and you can see a specific advantage, you can see this home is far less expensive than all the other homes in the area, and that the reason is because of the bad kitchen, the bad bathrooms, the floor covering, the paint job, all those types of things. Clearly, you can increase the value of the home and sell it, but you just wouldn't be getting the advantage of the market, just increasing the value just by the fact that that's the way the market's moving. Now, let's go ahead and jump in and look at what some prices are. As you'll see on the video, if you're a member of the Rebel Underground, and you'll be getting an email relating to that, the first thing I like to do is once I've left the local scoop page for San Antonio, I like to sort of take a broader view of the city, and there's two things I'm looking for. One is crime. So I will turn on the crime heat map, and overlaid over that is also going to be home prices. And I will often put, if I personally have strategies that involve a minimum number of bedrooms, I'll put that in as a search criteria. One thing you need to remember is when you're looking at the broad view, you're only going to see about 30 properties out of all the properties that are available. The system just can't display more. So you're going to look for general prices, general trends, and then zoom into the various areas that make sense for you and find specific properties and see what works. Once you've done that, and I'm going to go ahead and put in a filter here just so I'm seeing fewer stuff, I'm going to zoom into San Antonio. San Antonio has a lot of different areas that are experiencing relatively high crime. Downtown has got a huge swath of it, heading up towards a place called Tobin Hill. There's an area here that is looking less red, so I'm going to go there just to kind of get an idea. And I'm seeing, here's one that looks relatively promising. $140,000. 3 beds, 2 baths. Let's see here. And let's now go and check out homes for rent in the same area, and we'll overlay that exact same area of the map. Now, this is right in an area called King William. And let's see what things tend to rent for in that area. But I'm seeing rents scattered all over the place. 1,200, 800, 1,700, 695, 1,400. Let me see if I can track this down. So now in nearly the exact same area, I'm seeing a 2-bed, 1-bath for $1,700 a month. I'm seeing a 3-bed, 2-bath for $1,700 a month, and a 4-bed, 4-bath for $3,800 a month in the exact same neighborhoods. So if we take that $140,000 home that's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and we apply the 1% rule to it, and by applying the 1% rule, I mean we take 80% of the asking price, which would be the amount that we would be financing, right? And then we take 1% of that, we end up with $1,120. So that actually looks like a pretty good opportunity. I think that it would be very reasonable to be able to be positive cash flow on that property right out of the bat. Now, of course, you'd want to get more ground truth. You'd want to figure out a little bit more about this property. By looking at it, it looks like it may have a little bit of an upkeep issue. It looks like an older property. So there may be some deferred maintenance there that you have to deal with. But from a standpoint of managing your month-to-month expenses, you may come up with a little bit more of an expense in terms of upgrading a property like this. But run the numbers, figure out the details. There's clearly areas in San Antonio where you can get a relatively low barrier to entry. And the area I'm looking here is Arsenal and King William areas of San Antonio. But again, there are others, right? And for me, I personally like to start with the crime map, the heat map for crimes, just because I don't like dealing with a lot of the things that go along with having a property in really high crime areas. But this is a great way to start. And in terms of just homes currently for sale, the distribution seems to be actually pretty interesting, even within the city itself. If you go and you drill down, I'm seeing everything from 1.4 million over in Terrell Heights to just down the road, 314,000 for 4-bedroom, 299 for a 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 2-bath for $324.99. It's in a fairly nice area just northeast of San Antonio, of downtown San Antonio. So it looks like there's quite a few opportunities here. Here's one for $85,000. That's in a semi-nice area, 3-bed, 1-bath. I think there's lots of opportunities here. So if San Antonio sounds even vaguely sexy to you, I think it would be worth your time to take a look, run some of these numbers, and see what piques your interest. And in terms of just in general, getting a feel, once you've done this, getting in touch with a real estate professional in the area, getting on a regular mailing list where you're getting updates in the areas that you're most interested in, I think would definitely be worth your time. And then, of course, also consider the other areas of Texas that have shown growth. If these folks are correct, then Texas could be seeing a lot more growth ahead of them, whether we're talking about Dallas, Austin, or now San Antonio. Now, I've spent time in San Antonio. I don't know if I want to live there. It's super hot and humid, so not a big fan. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a great investment. There's no rule that says you have to live where your property is. And that's one great thing about real estate investing. You can do it wherever you want, whether you want to live there or not. All right, folks, I hope that has been some useful information for you. Of course, my goal is always to give you far more value and information than the time that you spend listening to the show. That's the kind of payoff I'm hoping to deliver each and every time. Thanks again for listening. I'll talk to you all next time.